Put an old car next to a new one at a car park. The old car has a thick chrome bar across its front, catching the light. The new car has a smooth plastic panel that flows into the body lines. Someone nudges the old car gently at low speed. A faint scuff on the chrome. The bumper survives. A similar nudge on the new car cracks the plastic panel. The damage looks worse and the repair will cost more. The instinct this produces is understandable. Cars used to be tougher, and now they are made of cheaper material to save money. That instinct is largely wrong. The plastic is not the weakness. It is the outermost layer of a system that works very differently from what it replaced. Let's get into it right here on Small Things. The cover is not the bumper. The visible plastic panel at the front and rear of a modern car is called the bumper cover. It is not the bumper system, it is the skin. Behind the bumper cover sits a layer of energy-absorbing material, typically molded foam or a plastic honeycomb structure. Behind that sits the reinforcement beam, a bar of high-strength steel, aluminum, or composite, bolted to the vehicle's structural frame. The cover gives the car its shape and handles weather, debris, and aesthetics. The absorber manages low-speed impact energy. The beam provides structural connection to the vehicle. Each layer has a specific job. The plastic cover's job is not to stop an impact. Its job is to be the right material for the surface of the car. From steel bar to layered system. The very first cars had no bumpers. As traffic increased through the early 20th century, manufacturers began fitting simple steel bars to the front and rear of vehicles, primarily to prevent wheels and bodywork from making direct contact in low-speed collisions. The bar was structural, visible, and entirely honest about what it was. By the 1950s, bumpers had become something more. Chrome-plated steel bumpers on American cars of the era were styled as much as engineered, massive horizontal bars that wrapped around the front of the car and became part of its visual identity. They were heavy, they were polished, and they were genuinely capable of surviving low-speed contact with very little visible damage. A parking lot tap left a smudge on the chrome. The car drove away intact. This era produced a specific mental model of what a bumper should be: thick, shiny, and nearly indestructible. It is a model that persists today, even though almost nothing about the conditions that created it still applies. The 1970s changed the calculation. In the United States, federal regulations required bumpers on new cars to withstand a 5-mile-per-hour impact without damage to the vehicle. Manufacturers responded by making bumpers heavier and more rigid. The cars of the mid-1970s had bumpers that looked ungainly and added significant weight to vehicles that were already under pressure to become more fuel-efficient following the oil crises of that decade. The weight penalty turned out to matter more than engineers had initially accommodated. A heavy bumper that kept the car undamaged in a parking lot bump also added mass that every gallon of fuel had to move for the entire operating life of the vehicle. On a car driven for 10 years, the cumulative fuel cost of carrying an unnecessarily heavy bumper is not trivial. The same years brought research into occupant safety that complicated the protect the car goal. Studies of crash dynamics were showing that rigid structures transmitted impact force more directly to occupants, while structures that deformed progressively dissipated energy more gradually. A bumper optimized to survive the impact undamaged might be doing so at a cost not visible in the car park. Engineers began asking whether the goal should change, not survive the impact undamaged, but manage the energy of impact while weighing as little as possible. That question produced the layered system that replaced the steel bar. Why plastic for the skin? Once engineers had decided the outer surface of the bumper system could deform in low-speed impacts without the system failing, the choice of material for that surface opened up considerably. Steel had been the default because it was structural. But if the cover does not need to carry structural load, which the reinforcement beam now handles, the cover can be made from whatever material is best for a large, shaped, painted, weather-facing surface on a moving vehicle. Plastic covers weigh far less than equivalent steel panels of the same size and shape. Bumper covers are large components, and the weight difference across the full surface is meaningful at a time when every kilogram saved in a vehicle improves fuel economy, extends electric range, or reduces emissions. This is not a trivial calculation. It is one of the primary reasons the change happened. Aerodynamics pushed in the same direction. A modern bumper cover can be molded in complex compound curves that flow smoothly into the body lines of the car, reducing aerodynamic drag. Achieving equivalent shapes from stamped steel is considerably more difficult and expensive. Plastic molding also allows vents, grille openings, sensor housings, and camera recesses to be incorporated into a single piece during manufacture rather than cut and assembled afterward. Corrosion matters too. Steel bumpers in the chrome era relied on plating and paint to resist rust, and they often failed at the edges and mounting points where chips and road debris struck. Plastic does not rust. A chipped plastic cover looks cosmetically damaged, but the material itself does not corrode further. In climates with road salt or high humidity, this is a genuine durability advantage over steel. In very gentle, low-speed contacts, plastic covers can also flex and return to approximately their original shape, where an equivalent steel panel would crease permanently. This is not a universal property and does not apply to anything approaching a significant impact, but in the specific case of a very slow car part contact, the plastic cover can sometimes recover where the steel would not. The bumper that protected the car. The chrome bumpers of the 1950s and 60s were designed with a clear goal: keep the car undamaged. They were very good at this. A parking lot tap left a mark on the chrome. The car drove away. Nobody was hurt. The bumper did exactly what it was built to do. What wasn't being measured was what happened inside the car in a more serious impact. A rigid steel bar that does not deform passes force. If the bar holds its shape completely, the energy of the collision travels straight through it into the car's structure and into the people inside. The car looks fine. The occupants absorb the impact. That trade-off was invisible in a car park but became significant at higher speeds. The layered system works on a different principle. When the cover deforms and the absorber behind it compresses, those components are doing something the chrome bar never did. They are using up some of the collision's energy themselves before it reaches the passenger compartment. The car ends up with more visible damage, but the force that arrives at the people inside is lower because part of it was spent crushing the components designed to be sacrificed. The goal shifted from protecting the car to protecting the people. The car started looking worse as a result, and the people inside started being better protected, even though from the outside the modern system can look like a step backward. The bump you didn't think was serious. Someone stops at a pedestrian crossing and feels a gentle tap from behind. They get out, see the plastic panel cracked along one edge. The other driver is apologetic. The contact was slow. Both of them stand there, assuming this will be straightforward to fix. A person watching a crash test video for the first time sees the front of the car crumple dramatically while the dummy barely moves. Their instinct is that something went wrong. What they are watching is the system working. The front absorbed the energy, so the person inside did not have to. The dramatic damage visible from outside is the intended outcome of the design. Someone who drives a 1970s car with a chrome bumper has watched it survive contacts that would crack a modern plastic cover. They are not wrong about what they observed. What they cannot compare is what their body would experience in a significant impact in that car versus a modern one, because the rigid bar that protected the chrome also meant more of the collision's force passed straight through to the people inside. A body shop mechanic has had this conversation many times. The customer cannot believe the estimate for what looks from outside like a cracked piece of plastic. The mechanic lifts the cover off and shows them what is back there: the absorber, the sensors, the wiring, the beam. The customer's expression changes as the number on the quote starts to make sense. Different parts, different jobs. The chrome bumper of the 1950s was one object doing one job: sit at the front of the car, look imposing, and survive the contact. It did both things well in the conditions it was designed for. The modern bumper system is 4 or 5 components doing different jobs in a sequence that only makes sense when the layers are understood together. The cover manages shape, weather, and aesthetics. The absorber handles low-speed energy. The beam provides structural load path. The sensors behind it extend the vehicle's perception of its surroundings. None of those jobs can be done well by a single chrome bar. The plastic you see is the part that looks weakest and costs the most to repair. Everything behind it is doing the work that chrome never could. If this changed the way you look at the next bumper you see on the road, let us know in the comments what you want us to explore next. We might make it our next episode. Thanks for watching. History often hides in the smallest details.